Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Ron Faller. Ron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, I live in Pickering, which is just east of Toronto. In Toronto, Southern Ontario is not the easiest to invest in. We don't invest there. It's just not worth it. Things are too expensive. So I've been in advertising the last 20 years or so. Also spent a few years working in the bank. And while working in the bank, I realized that your traditional investments like mutual funds and GICs just aren't going to get you a lot. So we were thinking, what are we going to do? And at the same time, my wife was working at an accounting firm doing personal taxes for millionaires and some of the NHL players. And she realized that the millionaires and the multimillionaires, they all have real estate in their portfolios. Yep. So we decided, let's try some real estate. And we bought our first property about 5 years ago in Oshawa, just east of Toronto.
Oshawa and Peterborough seem to be the popular places to go buy some rental properties.
They were really good a few years ago, and even a couple of years ago. It's hard to find the deals there in Oshawa out to Peterborough. Peterborough is really exploding right now. But there's still deals to have. We're now starting to shift more that we're going to look more for off-market deals.
Yeah.
Because if you're just going to get off the MLS, you just there's no room to work with, right?
No, I'm always blown away. I'm not sure who is buying my properties to turn them into more rentals. I don't know how that works. The ones that I'm selling.
What it could be, and this is part of our story. We've learned a lot doing it on our own.
Yeah.
Made a lot of mistakes, and I think probably the people buying your properties are the more inexperienced investors. So like when we bought the one in Oshawa, we just thought, you buy a property, you rent it out, and off you go. But you have to really know your numbers. You have to make sure you're cash flowing. We bought the first one in Oshawa thinking, well, we'll convert it to a duplex.
Yeah.
It had a tenant. We learned that you should screen your tenants, even if you're going to buy a property. Interview the tenant like you're screening for your own. Because sometimes a tenant can make it or break it.
That's a good idea because a lot of times, even myself personally, I've skipped that process altogether because I'm like the deal makes sense, so I'm just gonna inherit these tenants. But especially if you had invested in Ontario, then to get rid of these tenants might be very difficult, especially if they're paying. It's pretty much impossible to get rid of them. But then maybe they're not they're probably not a problem if they're paying.
Yeah, well, it depends. I mean, we did have someone in that first property who was paying, but before marijuana was legal, he was selling pot and just wasn't so good to the place. It was hard. We actually did end up selling that place because we found out that we could not legally convert it to a duplex. And again, so we learned, if you're going to buy a property, you got to do your research. You got to know your numbers. So we couldn't convert it. So it was a negative cash flow. So we thought, let's just cut our losses and go. But the tenant wouldn't leave. We tried cash for keys. That didn't work, surprisingly. He didn't want to leave. Which that's their choice.
Yeah.
But even when we sold it and he still wouldn't leave, we had to get to the point where sheriff did have to escort the tenant out. So we learned a lot about, how to deal with difficult tenants. We've had a couple other things like that too. So it's been a great learning experience. We then bought something in Windsor because Windsor about 3-4 years ago was like really dirt cheap. It was amazing what you could buy there. And the new bridge was being built, the new hospital was going to be built. So we bought a property there, did okay, and then started actually reading Rich Dad books. And so we joined a Rich Dad program, a coaching program. And on these calls, we realized all the coaches were in the U.S. Everything was American. And we're hearing all these crazy numbers, like people buying properties for $25,000 and $50,000. So we started doing a lot of research and realized, there's a lot of benefits to investing in the U.S. Tenant laws in some states are a lot easier, a lot better.
Yep.
You get a lot more bang for your buck with the cash flow. You can buy a property. We ended up buying a duplex near Buffalo for $85,000 and it cash flows for $100 a week. And that's in U.S. dollars.
Cool.
So you can't do that in Canada. You can't buy anything for 85,000 in cash flow, $400.
It's tricky. I don't think you can buy much for 85,000. If you're in Toronto, you can buy.
Exactly.
You might be able to get a parking spot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that's what got us starting investing in the U.S.
Okay, so you got into the U.S. What did you? Where'd you go? What was your process to decide where to go, and then where'd you end up going? What'd you buy?
Well, we did a lot of research. Actually, surprisingly, we did a lot of reading in magazine articles, real estate magazines. A couple of friends of ours had already started investing in Florida. We looked into that. So I believe in checking out the city before you buy something. So we were in Toledo. We went to Rochester. So I finally decided for the first one, let's keep it close to home. We looked at Buffalo. I found also a very good manager and realtor in the Buffalo area. We connected well, so I thought, okay, let's go down there, check it out. Found a nice property, and that's only a 2-hour drive away. So I thought, well, if we're going to start, let's do something close in case there's any problems. I can jump down there in 2 hours and take care of what the situation is.
Yeah.
But I found it was also amazing and really important to have a really good management team that you can rely on. They know what they're doing. They're investors themselves, and that's what made it so much easier. So we don't even have to touch the place. They take care of everything.
Yeah, no, the property management can make or break you.
You need time to get to know them, to build a relationship. But it's hard if you're looking for a new manager. You don't have 6 months to get to know them. You just got to hire them and see how they work out.
Yep. Yeah. So you basically got to see what you can find on them online, and then take a jump at it and hope it works out. And if it doesn't work out, then move on to another one.
Yeah.
Do it again. How many properties do you have down in the U.S. now?
Well, we have one.
Yep.
Because after we bought that one last year in the fall.
Yep.
And then we have that one, and then we actually sold one of our properties in Windsor at the beginning of this year.
Yep.
It was almost prophetic that we didn't know this pandemic was coming.
Yep.
And a thought popped into my head, and I said to my wife, maybe we should sell that property. I think we can make a good profit right now if we sell that. And then we actually closed on it just the beginning of March. And and we made a good profit. We sold it at a good time. So we were back up in Windsor, and then we were going to start, you and I have been talking about, but we were going to start doing something in Ohio.
Yep.
And then this pandemic started.
Yep.
So that's made me rethink our strategies, because we wanted to start picking up more properties this year and into next year. So we're going to start shifting a little bit to try and do some flips.
Yep.
So I'll combine that with holding, but also try and get some flips in there and just see how things go. So we haven't gone back down to the States, but we are going to get back down there again.
Well, I don't think anyone's went to the States in a while. We got a nice solid wall right now. So you're thinking Ohio? Yeah, you're not going to do Buffalo again?
No. Well, the thing was this, that again, like I said before, always do your research. So that we found, and I say Buffalo, but it's actually a city called Lockport, which is just 20 minutes outside of Buffalo. Beautiful city. I was amazed at how clean the city is. You drive through it, you think you're going through a movie set.
Oh,
it's
nice.
so nice and clean. And really nice. We really liked it. But we found the taxes were a little bit high. And then in New York State, the tenant laws are very similar to Ontario. So it takes a while. If you need to get a tenant out, it does take a while. Not as long as Ontario. But when you serve notice, if they haven't paid rent, here in Ontario, you just serve notice. You hand it to them yourself. In New York State, you have to hire what's called a process server. And you have to give them, I believe it's 16 days notice, and you have to do that twice. And you have to pay for that service.
What does that cost to do that service?
I don't remember.
Okay. I was just curious.
I think it's maybe around the $100 mark or less. I'm not sure. It costs a couple hundred, which again isn't so bad. So it's not too bad. So we were thinking, well, the taxes are a bit high. We are looking at Ohio. We thought, maybe we won't go down there, but we have an excellent manager. And then one thing I didn't realize that I just found out a few weeks ago that makes it different from Ontario is that when the first year lease is up, you do not have to renew with the tenant, and the tenant has to move out.
Contracts.
So that's not so bad.
Yeah.
It's not like Ontario. So we like Lockport because it's so close. We have a great manager there. The cash flow is pretty good. So we're still considering maybe a couple more properties down in the Buffalo area as well. But then we're also looking into Ohio. We did look at Toledo a couple years ago, and just decided at that point not to do it. We were looking at Toledo because it was so close to Windsor. We had a couple properties out there already. So check out the properties Windsor, jump down, 45-minute drive to Toledo. But we haven't gone into Ohio yet.
Okay. And so, like, Ohio is like, so you're mostly looking at Toledo for Ohio? Is that if you're going to go there?
Considering, well, we've been considering Dayton. We are going to give Toledo another look. When we did look at Toledo, it was a bit of a rush. We were down there just for one day. And unfortunately, we went to some of the okay neighborhoods and some of the neighborhoods that were not so desirable. But we've since found out there's better neighborhoods. Like, we had to put the price up higher, and we would find some better neighborhoods. So Toledo's still on the radar.
But that's still like that's still good. You still want to see the good and the bad so you understand it.
Of
right?
course.
You don't want to just see the good and you're like, this looks like a beautiful place, and then you just start buying blindly. So whenever you're going down there, I know it's still early, but is there a certain price point you're looking for? What kind of things are you looking for your properties?
Well, we're thinking about for a while we're thinking about turnkey, but we might actually even follow the model that you're doing. Try and find something under market value, and possibly do some burrs, but for sure something under market. We're not just going to pick up something at market value. And we're probably going to do some renovations, so we might be doing some burrs.
No, I've heard of lots of people buying properties in the Midwest, especially people from the East and West Coast. They go into the middle to buy, and they buy it off the MLS, and it seems like a deal compared to where they are. But the same thing is, if you want to sell or need to sell or whatever, it's still only worth what you paid for it. So you have to buy it, right? You have to buy it so that it makes sense that you can, because things change in your life. It might be just like that, your first property. For some reason, you need to sell it. You don't like the tenants. You don't like the place is falling apart, and it's your constant nightmare that you can't sleep because of. Who knows what it is? But.
And the other thing too is, and something that I have to be careful of, is you don't want to jump around to too many different cities, because once you have a couple properties in one city, then you get to really know that city. You know what's going on. You know what the renters are like. You know what you can expect from the municipality and all the different laws there. So if you're buying a property here, property there, which I know some people do, you're relearning that market all over again every time you do that, right? So we don't want to go look at Toledo and then go look at Buffalo and then go look at Indianapolis or things like that. We want to be careful we're not going to too many different places. Otherwise, we're just relearning the whole market over again.
And that is really good advice too. Also for the property management. Way back, probably like 2 years ago, I interviewed Marco Santorelli on the show, and I never aired this part of the show. But afterwards, we sat and talked, and I told him about what I was doing. And at that time, I think I was in Huntsville, Alabama, Indianapolis, Indiana, and Kansas City, Missouri. And he was just like, stop getting in more markets. Go deep into a market. Make yourself important to those property managers, because the more houses you have with that manager, the more important you become, right? If you're just the guy that has one house and you're off doing other stuff, you're a little bit lower on the totem pole than the guy has 40 houses, right? They're going to get a little bit more attention than you are. So.
And that's the way I feel too. Like, for example, the manager I have down in Buffalo, we only have one property with him. It's a duplex. But we've had some difficulties with one tenant, and it's hard. I don't want to call the guy or bug him too much because he's only got one of our properties. But another thing too, I'd say, is that, and this is what I learned from working in the bank. You hear a lot of people selling mutual funds talk about diversifying your portfolio. So they talk about different sectors, but I see that you should have your whole portfolio like that: real estate, mutual funds, stocks, whatever. But even within your real estate portfolio, you could diversify by going to different cities. But I think maybe a better way to diversify is within your city, diversify with different strategies. So some burrs, some flips. So you're still diversifying, but you're still staying in the market that you know.
I'm literally just reading a book on this exact topic too.
Was that right?
And it was like really resonating with me because a lot of it, he starts out doing the same thing as me and bought a lot of properties that were going to make you a lot of money over time, right? They still cash flowed really well, but really the long-term game was what you're playing for, right? And what he basically gets to the point is that you need to start doing some flips. You need some stuff. You need money now. You need money in a little bit, and then you need long-term money. So you need to break that up, and then you mix it across with other strategies, right? Just like exactly what you're saying. So you do some burrs, so you'll get money back, but those properties will be highly leveraged. You'll go and do some flips, and you can get some cash right now. You may be able to give off some of the properties that you can't actually use, and do some wholesaling to some other people. Some maybe the timing isn't worked out or whatever, right? But yeah, mixing and matching some lease options where you'll get a chunk of cash at the start, chunk of cash at the end, and a cash flow throughout. Just to piece it all together. What I'm really interested in, I'm probably going to have a podcast out on this in the next month or so, is I've just been deep diving subject to. I've listened to been reading books on it and listened to every podcast and every YouTube channel that has anything to do with subject to. But mix your strategies, get your toolbox going, right? Anyway, I want to crazy.
And the other thing too is it with that diversity, it gives you different exit strategies, especially with the economy. So especially now, no one's really sure. You hear so many people talk about, the prices are going to go down. Well, you can be prepared because you can be holding some, you can be ready to flip some. Gives you more exit strategies to work with, right? When the economy becomes unpredictable, and just gives you more to work with.
That's exactly it too. I did a show on that way back.
I think I'm more and more getting appreciation and want to help more of the new investors. I mean, I'm not that seasoned myself. I'm still learning a lot, I'm sure you are too. But starting off, it's overwhelming. If you look at Southern Ontario, where does a new investor start? So definitely going down to the States, and you can still start with your first one or two mortgages with a conventional bank. Like we went with TD.
Yep.
So it gets you started. I believe in getting your foot in the door and getting started. As soon as you get started, then you're a little bit more confident to do the next one. But I totally agree. The price point just makes it so much easier.
Yep. And this is totally biased advice, but I hear people all the time buying real estate in other parts of Ontario that are really far away from them. And yes, then they can make the numbers that I can get in the States, right? They can get similar numbers. The problem is you're in a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere. Right. Instead, you don't have the same population. You don't have the same employment. You don't have the same dynamics of a large city. That's why a lot of lenders even shy away from. Whenever I was trying to get loans for properties in Drumbo, which is just outside of Cambridge, but it's a small little village, to go get a mortgage on a property like that, it's so much harder. And then the loan to value goes down, and they're like, we're not going to loan you at 80% there. You're not in the city, right? Because there's not the same tenant pool. There's not a lot of things, so you could take advantage of these large cities and the lower prices combined together.
And how's it going to appreciate too? Because if you're going further north in Ontario, you're just getting further away from the U.S. border, right? So you've got to wonder about jobs and things like that as well. And just the bigger cities are along the border. And so with the smaller city, I question how much more it's going to appreciate. But yet some things have been crazy lately. I never would have thought that Thunder Bay would be a huge place that people would want to invest in. But, things like that's happening too.
Yeah, you never know. It's sometimes it's the roads, the trade routes, right? Like the 401 was the first big explosion all the way along, all the way to Windsor, starting from Toronto, and blew its way out both ways. But it's going to move its way up whenever there's...
It has to.
Yep, there's...
Yeah, it's crazy. It's amazing. When you go now, you'd think that, Windsor is a little bit of a hub and Toronto's a hub. And if you get sort of in between, maybe, further east of London, you'll find some cheap stuff. But it seems like everything from Toronto all the way to Windsor, everyone's buying. So, and even east out past Peterborough even.
Yeah. So I just thought of this too, because I wrote down advertising. You were doing advertising before. Have you found that helps you with real estate at all? Do you do anything related to that?
I guess it does. The advertising I did was more specific to actual sign advertising.
Okay.
But it's amazing because you really start to learn the mentality of consumers and how people read messages. So I can use it in, like building a website and when you're negotiating and stuff like that. So, because there's sales involved too. It's marketing and it's sales. So you just sort of pick up and get better at negotiating with people and understanding why they want something, why they don't want something. So if you're talking to a lender or even a tenant, how do you want to deal with them? Or if you're talking to a seller, which is something, of course, I'll be doing more of if I'm looking for off-market deals, right? So I guess what I got out of the advertising is just understanding the seller and the consumer mentality, and it would help more with negotiating.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we had the property bought in Windsor. We had our it was going to be our first burr, a small burr. Had an extension. We got it for a good price. We are going to put a nice 3-piece bathroom in there. Everything was going on pretty good, and then the whole COVID thing started. So my contractor, all his workers just stopped. So that was on hold for a while, and then he was starting up again almost a month ago. He said, well, I'm going to go in there myself. There's only about a week's worth of work left. And then I got a letter from the city of Windsor saying that someone had reported to them that we're doing construction. They wanted to check if I had the permits. And again, you got to have communication with everyone on your team. You got to make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. A great contractor that I have in Windsor, great guy. And it may be the case that we don't need permits, but he decided not to pull permits. So now he was just about to start it up, finish it up. This should have been done in February.
Yeah.
So it's been sitting vacant since January. And so now we're waiting. We've submitted the application. We're waiting for the city to get back to us. They'll do an inspection. And if everything's okay, then a week or two and it's done. If it's not okay, then who knows? I'm going to have to start the work again. But again, you really, I've heard it said, like even with a property manager, you got to manage your managers. Not that you have to bother them, but you still have to oversee things.
Yep.
Make sure.
No, you can't let them go loose. Yeah.
No, you can't.
And the funny
It's
thing
your investment.
You mentioned like the stopping for COVID. In the States had a different stance on all of that. Construction was considered an essential service, so they kept working. And what actually happened is the opposite problem for the construction companies is a lot of people stopped buying and doing the renovations. The investors, right? A lot of them got scared and stopped.
Right.
So what happened was with my contractor came to me and said, "Look, what we're gonna do is we're gonna move more people onto your projects because they were usually they had several teams." And I was like, that's great. But then I went, wait a second. The way my contract is written with the contractor is this is the date that the project has to be done. If you get it done early, for every week you get early, you get a $1,000 bonus. For every week late, I pay $1,000. There's $1,000 here or $1,000 of them, and I'm like, man, if they get this done like 2 months early, I'm like, or $1,000 per week. Yeah, so I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to pay a whole lot of extra money for this. So I contact them like, well, this is an out of the box situation, and they're like, don't worry about the penalties. We just want to keep everyone employed, right? If you're still paying, we're still working. We just want to keep our guys. We don't want to lay anyone off. And I said, no problem. So I bought some more houses to keep them busy.
Yeah, you got to watch that. Yeah. So I haven't heard that before. Is that a typical clause or penalty that contractors have in the States?
No.
That they charge you if they finish early?
No. It's just one contractor I work with, and it's actually it's a great thing. But I think there's a buffer around it, right? So this is it's going to be a 3-month project. So this is the date it's supposed to be done. And then 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, or a week before, I can't remember. I have to look at the thing. That's a buffer of okayness for both of us. And if we're done early, we want a bonus for getting done early. And if we're done late, then we're going to pay you, they'll pay a penalty for being late because there's costs that I'm running, like the carrying costs going on. So it works to keep everything right on track.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of these tiny things, they're like, oh, that's a great idea. But whether the contractor will go for that or not, because in all honesty, a lot of them that I've found, they love to have the free reign. They like to be late. and not deliver at the time they expected, and they don't want to pay any penalties. It's pretty rare that they're ahead of time unless they've made up a random date just in order to be able to beat it.
Yeah.
So, and
I remember watching the video you had with Linda a couple months ago, where she said something really interesting. Where she said, when you have a contractor, make sure you allow triple the time they say. They say it's going to be a month, it's going to be 3 months, and it seems to be true. That's what happens.
Yeah,
they go kind of include a buffer.
You got to include a buffer, especially for first time with a contractor. Some of them are on budget, on time. My contractors down in Alabama, perfect. Like, it was, that's the dream. I just want to pay for it. I just want it to get done on time and on budget. And that worked out well there. Whereas I'm not going to start dropping even cities because people start figuring out who I'm talking about. But there's certain contractors that are never on time and never on budget. Because that's not how they run their scope of business. And that's just how they do it.
And sometimes it's like with any business that the quotes they give, they're trying to sometimes lowball so they can get the job, even though they know it will probably end up costing more. And yet I say to people, just give me the real price, then I can make a proper decision.
Oh, that's the same thing too. Especially with that same contractor down in Alabama I used to work with, and I did some JV projects where we were renovating properties down there, and they're like, the JV be like, well, there's only one contractor quote. And I'm like, yep. And they're like, well, what about, you want to shop around and find some more quotes? And I'm like, nope. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because they're on time and on budget. Yeah. And I'm like, that's worth more to me than saving a few bucks and being late. And especially if we're doing a fix and flip loan, I would much rather be on time and on budget. That is more important to me. If I can have predictable numbers that are good, and I can run those numbers and I know they're good, it doesn't matter after that. It's the ones where they find magical electrical issues during the construction, you're way out of budget. That's the stuff that you're just like, I don't, this is a pain in the butt and I don't want to work these people.
I hate when they find those magical things.
Yeah, exactly. So but sometimes sometimes it's their fault that they should have seen it beforehand, and sometimes it's buried in the wall and there's no way they can see it unless you start causing ruckus and opening up stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway. Cool. So I think we talked way longer than I was expected.
I was figuring that was going to happen. There's always lots to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, I know. We could sit and talk about forever. Ron, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
They can email me at fallerproperties@gmail.com. So that's FALLER properties@gmail.com. Or my website, Ron Faller, www.ronfaller.com. So that's RONFALLER.com. And if they want to, they can connect with me on Facebook as well. Just look me up, Ron Faller, on Facebook, and they can connect with me that way as well.
Yep. And once the meetups start, like I met Ron at a meetup in Ajax.
Ajax, yeah, that was amazing. That was an amazing meeting, because at that time I was thinking, is nobody investing in the States? And then I hear this guy say, oh, well, at least my property's in Canada. And I thought, well, as soon as someone says my property's in Canada, that means they got properties in the States. So that's where we met, and it was a great meeting. It was perfect timing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I was sitting right behind you with the
presentation. You were sitting a couple tables over.
Oh, a couple tables over.
But then I remember we were talking so much. I think we're the last two people there.
Oh, that's my trademark. If you see me go to the Toronto real estate meetup in North York, I'm the last one there. You see me go to KWCREI, I'm the last guy there. Or go over to London Creative.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that closes the place down. I'm always the last one there. That's the best conversations you have once you had a couple drinks.
You learn so much, and you build relationships.
Yeah. Great. And if you are looking to network too with Ron, he's at meetups as well.
Yep. And I'll shoot one thing in there, at least for the newer investors, especially now without the meetups, Facebook groups. People are just there to talk, and you can get answers, and you don't have to worry about anyone having an ulterior motive. People are just there to chat, and there's so many real estate investing Facebook groups now, and you make relationships, you start networking, you find out, oh, this person lives in the city I'm interested in. So I found that Facebook groups are really great lately.
And you can basically attend meetups that are nowhere near you right now because they're all online. You want to go to a meetup in Vancouver? It's online right now. So you just go join their group, and it's free usually because it's an online one. You can go attend them all over the country. Up until a couple weeks ago when the U.S. opened again, you could go do the same thing in the States, but they're all doing in-person ones again. They've opened right up, so that's not on the table anymore. But you can still do it all the way across Canada, at least for a bit, until they open this up.
Yep.
Awesome. Anyway, thanks so much for coming on the show, Ron.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, Glenn. Appreciate it. It's great.
Yep, thanks. I'll see you later.
All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Cool.